Thank you. That was great. In fact, when he said 2006, I thought to myself, oh no, where's he going with this? That was a pretty chaotic time in my life. So that's it's awesome that you have great memories of that. I do too. We were downtown at that time in the Savoy building, and for a year we were there for 25 years. And then during COVID, I purchased a building right here in St. Anthony Park, and with high hopes that all of us from the agency would come back and work 5 days a week, just like we always have for my entire adult career. And so now I own a co-working space. So if you're interested in shacking up with us like Justin did back in 2006, you can still do it in 2025. Okay, I think you asked me where the picture's taken. That's where I'm going to be in 36 hours. So I want to make this brief tonight.
Yeah.
So I can pack and get out to Cabo, Mexico. Yeah, and but I hear it's going to be 60 degrees next week, so my timing kind of sucks. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. Is everyone hearing me in the back okay? All right, great. So I don't want to say anybody who claims, but I will say anybody who claims to be an AI expert right now has something to sell you. And you know, how many years in AI do I have? The same as you, right? ChatGPT 3.5 came out. We all fired it up and started playing around with it, right? And of course, I've been in the machine learning space for a long time because Cicerone is a digital agency that let's get this clicker going. That could be a me thing, by the way, so y'all know. If not, it went. Okay. Agency I started in 1995. The only other person I know who's been doing it longer than me is Rob Metcalf right here in the third row. There we are. Quite clearly the founder of theinternet.com. True story. And so I always just say, yeah, no, I know the guy. I know the guy who owns the internet. And so we go back a long, long ways. And people always say, well, what were you doing in 95? And I said, what was I doing in 95? I was telling people about this thing called the internet, right? I was getting them their first email addresses. I was getting them their first websites and domain names. And you know, Google didn't even exist for another 3 or 4 years after we started the agency. So here I am 30 years later, and I'm still doing it. And what's interesting this time around is I can't believe I get to do this all over again. This is just the craziest. I mean, usually in your career, you get to sort of go through one major step change, and that's about it. And so I figured, well, the internet's my era, and I get to do this, and it's amazing, and everything else. And then, sure enough, November 2023, 2022? What was it? 2022, right? ChatGPT comes out. I'm playing with it, and I realize immediately, oh, this is the step change, right? And that was 3.5, right? Not that great, but 100 million data sources, I think it was in the first iteration. Now we're up to several billion or something like that. It's just absolutely insane. So we are a digital agency, primarily in the digital media space, but because of AI, we've been able to pivot to finally be able to do the things that we always wanted to do with data, and that is turn it into really consumer intelligence. We've always been able to do it, sort of, and now we're really able to do it. So I'm not saying that it's a major pivot in the agency. We're just being able to do some things now because of AI that would have just been too hard to do beforehand. All right, so before we get to level 200, we just want to level set a little bit of sort of where we're at. I apologize for those in the back of the room. I will do my best to laser pointer out some pretty small little figures. But the first thing I want to say is the only thing that I want to sort of leave you with, by the way, Dolly would not allow me to make a picture of Einstein. So I said, make a picture of a person that looks like Albert Einstein, and then it rendered it. So there you go. That's level 200 stuff right there. Yeah.
I know the company that owns the rights to Einstein. I used to work for them.
Oh, is it a bagel company?
No.
Oh, okay, all right. So anyways, if there's one thing that I want everybody to think about right now, is that each and every one of you are sitting next to Albert Einstein all day long. Okay? And so when we say to him, hey, Albert, can you take some meeting notes for me? And he's over there and he's saying, hey, Andrew, are you fucking kidding me right now? Right? That's what he's saying. It's like, I'm Albert Einstein. I don't need to take notes from you. Let's go solve quantum computing or something like that, right? We think of these tools right now as though we're not even partially tapping into what the tools can do for us. It's like having an entire staff of MIT graduates working for you and you're having them make coffee, right? So think about that every time you fire it up, just the amount of power that you have. I'm going to tell you a quick story about this. So yesterday morning, I had breakfast with a gentleman. And I requested breakfast from him because he emailed me about something entirely different. But in his title, and I won't name the company, and there's no reason I shouldn't name them, they're a very good company. But he had a senior level title, a C-level title, but it had AI in his title. And I responded back to him about the other matter, and then I said, let's get together for coffee because I want to know what a person at a big company with a C in their title that also has AI, what are you working on? What are you thinking about? What's your mandate, right? So we had coffee yesterday morning. And as we were having coffee, we were talking about AI and talking about the things that we were doing. And what he was saying was, at one point, he said, I kind of have a big tangle of things at the company that I work for. We have Salesforce, we're an SAP company. We're a Microsoft shop. I've got this stuff all over the place. And, we sit around talking with each other with my engineers. And it's just like, how's this thing going to work? It's just so messy. We're sitting there having coffee. I said, have you asked AI? Like, have you asked AI? Have you sat down with one of the higher level tools, put together an entire, you can speak into it. You can write it down. You could write it on a notepad and take a picture of it, and it will interpret what the image is saying. Write down everything that you're doing right now and what your troubles are, and go solve your problems and start moving on. And it wasn't like he was like, oh, I never thought of that. It's just that we're not there yet. We're usually using these tools for personal tasks, generally speaking. And so today, like level 200 for that guy is full automation of his business, right? He goes from using it for chat and note-taking and things like this to maybe solving the major problems that have had a lot of his people sort of like having consternation. So this is the one thing I want you to leave, is just to always remember how smart these tools are. Oh, wrong way. That joke was so good, I want to do it again. All right. Just a quick thing. Is anybody in the room a marketer? Few people marketers? How many others are, I don't know, engineers? Sorry, I'm just looking out at you and I'm thinking engineers. Sorry. I'm an engineer who can't code. Let's see, what else do we have? In management people in leadership positions? Good, kind of upskilling maybe? So how many upskillers are there right now? All hands should go up. Right? So one of the things that I've been looking at is, now I come at this day in and day out, usually from sort of a marketer's point of view. But it oftentimes doesn't change a lot. But so this is just an e-marketing report that came out a couple of days ago. What's the major focus right now among ad buyers, meaning advertisers, right? And number one is cross-platform measurement. Number two is generative AI, not just AI, but generative AI. Remember, these are advertisers. Attribution modeling, first-party data acquisition, marketing mix modeling, attention metrics, data clean rooms, DEI, ad supply chain, registering ad creative IDs, super fun. And Web3. Sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, you lost that. You lost the war. It's at the bottom of the list on Web3. But what's interesting is if you look at all of these things, these are all problems that AI could assist with. And what I also find interesting is that generative AI being number 2 on the list, that would scare me shitless if I'm a creative agency. Which I'm not. I was, but I'm not. And these tools are getting better and better. Has anybody here created a full length, let's say 2-minute video using AI now, right? That's a kind of still a production to have to like put together a 2-minute video. First, we got a lot of processing power. You have 8 seconds, maybe you have 20 seconds, depending on how much you want to pay. Or you've got to take tools from things like Runway and put it over into Midjourney into Runway, into Sora, and back into Runway, back into probably at the end of the day, you're going to default into like Adobe Premiere, right? And then use the old-fashioned tools to create your thing. But the thing that you're creating probably costs a couple $100,000 if you were an agency with a brand trying to figure out like how to create, like, so generative video for me, this is an absolute boon for small brands who never would have been able to afford traditional video anyways. So my brethren who are in the agency world, I do say to you all, first, I come in peace. 2, I also just want people to know that like this opens up video as a capability for anybody, for a 501c3 nonprofit, you know, whereas you don't have to start with like a $50,000 cost and then move from there. Now, I understand that there's a lot of cost pressures going on right now, and even a $50,000 video sounds pretty good right now for an agency. But this is fascinating, and it's fascinating to me that it's number 2. So why is this part of level 200? Because you can see that this is a line item that didn't exist before, and they're not doing it just to have fun. They're doing it because they see an opportunity for themselves to create great content that we know that consumers like at a much lower cost. And I know that lots of people don't want to hear things like that, but that's exactly what they're doing. And it's not agencies saying it, it's brands. So there's a lot of things that are sort of like this level 200. You know what 300 and 400 is going to be. It's only going to get better. Everyone always says the AI models are only the worst they're ever going to be today, right? And then when we wake up tomorrow, you know, the leaderboard will change. So speaking of the leaderboard, and this is where the folks in the back, I'll have to do some pointing out for you. But this goes from 2023, March 2023 to almost March 2025, okay? And what you'll see is the line that's going up here is ChatGPT, right? Starting with 3.5, then 3.5 Turbo and 4, which by the way, when you think about it, ChatGPT 4.0 is the default setting for most people who use ChatGPT, right? Or most of you, well, maybe you're a little more advanced because you're here in this room tonight. But, you know, that's sort of like the baseline use case is ChatGPT 4.0. And you can see how much, and these are scores based upon all sorts of things, reasoning skills, math, coding, English. What's that? Accuracy, yep, and all of this. So for a long time, you had basically Anthropic, Google showed up on the line at one point, Anthropic, back to ChatGPT, and you can see all these other models starting to get introduced in here, right? XAI shows up on the scene in August last year. And now I had to draw these lines in. First of all, a lot of these models that are great don't have heavy usage yet because they're so new that the adoption isn't there. People don't upgrade. It's like when you don't do your software update on your iPhone, right? Like I do it all the time, but my kids, are you kidding me? Like I don't even know what they're probably on, like a, you know, iOS 10 or something like that. So, you know, they're living down in this dark ages down here, and all the newer stuff is up here. But what's happened just in a very, very short amount of time, 6 weeks, 2 months, something like this. There's a steady slide. I had to write in the lines here. And who's up here is XAI and Anthropic. And Google is sitting over here. If I could hover over them, I'll show you what they are. But and this is not to say that, so these flop all the time, right? But there's some interesting sort of study I'm going to show you here in a second, how this all comes together. So now here's sort of our rankings right now of where the models are. So the best model right now Oh, I probably can't shine this onto a television. I probably just burned out the retina of your television. Anyways, on the far side, we have O3 Mini from ChatGPT. Grok 3 is number 2. Again, ChatGPT 07, and then DeepSeek. Okay, how funny is that? Something that didn't exist like a month ago, right? So DeepSeek comes out of nowhere, well, specifically China, and is open source, which also seems kind of crazy, does it not? Like, okay, well, that's a culturally interesting thing happening, that one of the best models of open source is coming out of China, going head to head, right, with Llama from Meta and Mistral, which are pretty much the open source. I mean, there are other stuff. I'm already behind on this kind of stuff too. But what I found also interesting about this particular slide is that I talked to a lot of brands, and a lot of leaders in IT and so forth. And a lot of brands are saying, yes, we use AI. We have Copilot on everybody's desktop, right? Or yes, we're using AI. We have Gemini that just launched out with everything when you just reopen the app, your Chrome browser. The problem is that these enterprises are defaulting to inferior models. And they're providing to everybody, here it is, here's your AI. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what a gap between a 49 and a 66 is, but why not work with the best models that you have? Right. And I think there's a lot of IT sort of level decisions that are being made that may be holding back their own organization because they can't remain nimble enough to be able to accommodate the rapid acceleration of the growth of all of these models. And so it's fascinating to me that we're already defaulting into sort of shitty stuff when you have options not to do that. Okay, so I'm old enough to remember that this is familiar, these little races, and I'm gonna see if I can get through this all right. And you don't need to hear it. But those of us who remember back when I started, we're in 94 right now. I'm probably not gonna go through all 7 minutes of this, just so you know. Because you gotta kind of get the picture after a second. But like in 95, when I started, what was search engines? Well, it was listing your website with Yahoo, right? Or listing yourself with Alta Vista. By the way, this was a kick-ass search engine. Alta Vista was awesome, right? The way I'm talking about Claude right now is the way I was talking about Alta Vista back then. Okay. And then all of a sudden there was this race that was going on. Look a little bit like the previous slide, right? And what I want to do, if I can figure out how to do it, is I want to fast forward. I really want to fast forward. It's way too long. I'm going to fast forward to where things start to get really interesting. Google comes on the scene back in 98. Okay. And Google, when it came on the scene, was right down here. And then it went up and it got to the very top. And the reason that I'm pointing this out to you, and you'll just see it continue to grow for another until it had like a 97%. The arc of adoption of new technology to this day continues to always follow the same curve in the competitive market, and that is that the winner takes both, always. So you think about that, the desktop wars. I'm sorry, I'm gonna show my cards. Apple was better, but it didn't win, right? Microsoft won the desktop, right? Google clearly won the search bar. We don't talk, by the way, I think it's pretty hilarious. It's like Lycos still has a 1.54% market share. But I'm like, it must be everybody that works at Lycos. I mean, I'm sorry, but like if you ran a cocktail party in San Francisco at the Embarcadero, right? And you're like, you're a single dude and you're trying to like cruise and go out on a date, and you're like, yeah, what's your name? It's Andrew. All right, cool, where do you work? Lycos. Like, I don't know. I think it's really funny that it still exists. I had no idea. Ask Jeeves still around. You know, Ask Jeeves is a joke. It's a joke. It's literally like a meme. Right? And he goes all the way up to just these market shares that are insane. My point being is that everything changes so rapidly, and there usually aren't as many competitors as you think. I want to go back to one more point in time, and that is in the early 90s, like 93, 94, there was a battle for supremacy of compute. And there was a few companies that were doing amazing compute. So Silicon Graphics, Sun Microsystems, and then some Microsoft sort of like spin-offs. And I don't know where Dell gets into the picture, but whatever. You know, SGI was brilliant, unbelievable. If you're a graphic artist, you wanted an SGI computer, right? I don't think they exist anymore. Sun Microsystems was unbelievable. They invented Java, right? Sun Microsystems was an enormously powerful computer, but they also went away. So part of the lesson about this that I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes the most powerful don't win, right? In fact, oftentimes and frequently, the best ones don't win. And so when you looked at that previous slide, I'm not going to go back because I'll screw it up. But you know, the Google, I had a box around it. Well, if Google owns that share percentage and the browser percentage, and they continue to introduce tools, they have a moat. So sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are, you may not be able to beat the moat. Now, does AI break that, right? Who knows, right? There's a lot of things to think about whether AI actually is able to do that. And so, you know, everyone talks about this time it's different, right? The Bitcoin cycle. I see a couple people nodding. Right? This time it's different. No, it's not. It's math. Okay. So now we're going to get into some level 200 stuff. And before I get too far into this, here's what I really need to do. I told you already I'm not an expert. Okay? So A, you shouldn't believe me. 2, you have ideas. And we are a community of people. And I believe in community just as much as Justin does, right? And if you have something you want to say and something you want to share about how you're using these tools and you've just sort of had that enlightenment moment, please share. Because your stories are just as important as mine, because I don't have any head start. Now, I work in it all the time and I love it. And it's more of a passion for me than it is even necessarily work. But again, I would love for you to raise your hand if I trigger something for you, a thought, whatever, let's do it. So one of my other jobs that I have is I'm a leader of in a worldwide independent agency network. And we all are independent owners of independent agencies. I said independent enough. And last week we were in Santa Fe. And what I did was I put myself on the hook, like in November, to give a presentation on how agencies are going to have to navigate Trump 2.0 from an economic standpoint, right? From operating a business standpoint. This was back in November when everyone was like, oh, maybe it's going to be all right. You know, maybe less chaos. Maybe you learned this first time around, a little less chaos, you know, bring in some good people. You know, we're all kind of like had a little bit of a glow. I'm not saying I was happy. I'm just saying that like I had a little bit of a glow, right? Well, 2 weeks before the conference, I'm like, how am I ever going to deliver this talk? Like, I have no idea what the tea leaves are. I can't tell anybody about anything, right? And so what I did is I do what I always do, and I leaned into the tools. And so we did a little contest, or I worked on this. And so TAN is the name of the organization. And we did a bit of a shootout. And so what I did was I presented 3 scenarios for a prompt, which I'll show you, about how agencies should be preparing for this administration and economics. I think I threw tariffs in there. I think I threw in, you know, a bunch of things. Anyways, I color coded, and then I used 3 different LLMs. Won't tell you which ones yet. I used 3 different LLMs, and I sort of like took the responses to this exact same prompts, and then I showed them to the members of the network, and I had them color code which response they thought was the best of the responses. And then at the end, we vote on it, and then I'll reveal which LLM they all thought gave the best answer to the question. Now, I'm not going to take you through all the questions because that was a different hour-and-a-half long presentation. But I'll take you through one. So this was the prompt, right? And I tried to be apolitical. Right? Like, what can you expect? Top 3 tailwinds, top 3 headwinds. What industries might thrive and which may suffer under this administration? Where so they can focus on new business. Please summarize your points succinctly so that I might use them in a presentation. Cite sources and graphics, which I might be able to use. Okay, so that was the first part. And so I went through, and I'll just show you the tailwinds one. Okay, because let's keep it positive here. Okay. So the first one was I was corrected. I said purple. They all are creative people, and they yelled at me, magenta. So magenta, the top ones were deregulation initiatives, emphasis on traditional energy and manufacturing, infrastructure investment plans. And then it has some things with a couple of different sources. And that was Team Magenta's response to what are the headwinds or tailwinds. No, this was, I think I called it Team Yellow Orange. That's what I called it. They had probably a Pantone color that they actually knew what it was. This is a corporate tax environment, is likely going to be business friendly, so that's good. Domestic manufacturing focus, made in America, that sounds good. Deregulation, so you might like that, especially if you're in energy, finance, pharmaceuticals. We're just going to let them go nuts. So if you're in there, you're good. So that was Team Yellow Orange.
No citations.
Point noted, no citations. And here's number 3, Team Blue. I said, I don't care what you say, that's blue. All right, and so top 3 tailwinds. Deregulation driving client investment has the sources, the update based upon that day, why this is a tailwind and what action should they take. And then there's ad and tech acceleration from the Carnegie Endowment. It's a tailwind because David Sachs from the All In podcast, that's the only reason people know who he is. And founder of PayPal and other things like that. Why they should do it, different things. Okay, protectionist brand surge from PBS News. If you haven't heard of PBS, it's our public television. I say that because it's like kids these days have no idea what public TV is. And I was raised on Sesame Street. And so, protectionist branding surge, all the different things. Okay, so that's Team Blue. All right, so drum roll, let's vote. Who liked Team Magenta's answer here? No one. Oh, yeah, you liked it? Okay, good. Team Yellow Orange. Yeah, total loser. And then how about Team Blue? You are just like the members of the TAN organization. Grok from XAI is number 3. You saw a lot of people in the room in Santa Fe go, aha. Well, what are we going to do about that? Right? And I said, you know what you're going to do about that? Is you're going to fire up that Twitter account that you deleted 3 years ago. Because that's the only way you're going to get into Grok. And they were pissed. So I too had taken a big breather off of Twitter for a while. And I was on Twitter since 2000, whatever the first week of Twitter was. I was on Twitter and I was active for a long time. And I've just been dormant there for a long time and I fired it up. And let me tell you about Grok for a second. So this is a level 200 thing that I want to talk to you about. I need you to get over your bias. And let me tell you why I can have you rest assured a little bit. And by the way, I know I'm being completely biased right now, by the way, and I also drive a fucking Tesla. Okay, so not cool. I haven't been keyed yet. I haven't been spray painted yet or anything like this. But like I had to get over a bunch of things to start using this tool. It's great. It's really good. Okay, I heard a
Yeah, it is good.
Okay, anybody else here using Grok? do you have a similar experience or not?
Depends on the questions too.
Yeah,
The models lean into certain subject matter in different ways. So depending on the queries and prompts, your mileage may vary across these different models.
anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprisingly good for doing software development work.
Okay,
We had a big hallucination thing today where it was quoting a 3-month-old way to use a certain tool rather than a change that happened. But overall, it's quite good.
I know I used it a while ago, I thought, I know something.
oh,
And I can't remember what I was doing on it.
well, if you're ever
That is a bit
disappointed,
bad.
just fire it up again.
Well, and I don't know if I was trying to do image.
Oh, doing
I
images,
can't
yeah.
remember what I was doing, and I thought, well, this is sure.
Yeah, so Grok isn't quite generative yet. Right, it's not like ChatGPT that has Sora now, and is anybody after around with Sora? Pretty great, right? I mean, pretty fun. So that's sort of my point. My point is I had to really put my bias aside because I had been really telling myself, always try and use the best models. So that you can understand what the most is, so that you can get out of it. And so this is just really an interesting sort of phenomenon that happened. The takeaway from this is don't pick your model yet. Okay, now is not the time. If you're working for an enterprise, now is not the time. And the reason is that there's so many different things happening, right? So like Salesforce, anybody here Salesforce people? Okay, I'll tell you the newest thing I know is that Agentforce just came out. It was just announced yesterday or something. Pretty sure the marketing department's way ahead on messaging from what actuality is, but it's a thing, right? Where agents can do all sorts of tasks for your salespeople, so they're not doing a bunch of different tasky stuff, and they can make more calls, or they can respond better. You know, that's what every salesperson wants, more time to make money. Okay, that's what they want. So right now, I think there's a lot of enterprises who are saying, well, we're gonna wait to see what Salesforce comes out with because we're a Salesforce company. Well, I don't know, Salesforce might be way down here on that list. We don't know what Agentforce is doing yet. And so, and then there are things that come out of the blue. So by the way, that's the Claude logo, right? So that's Anthropic. Also one of my favorites. I really love it for writing, and I know coders who really love it for coding. And I'm not a coder at all, but I sure look like one these days. Like I'm kicking out scripts, you know, I'm kicking out different things that I can like solve myself. And so for people who do code, what's your favorite LLM right now? Claude? Okay. I'm so glad to hear that I said the right thing to a group of coders, because I am not. So anyways, oh, that's good to hear. Okay, that's great. Okay, sorry, what did I say here? Oh yeah, takeaway, don't pick one yet. But if you do, don't pick a crappy, right? Yes,
Can I ask, do you have to pick one?
no,
Just now, but in the future,
I have so many tabs open.
because in this present day, the domain keeps getting deeper.
Yeah.
And it's a great market opportunity for us to even go deeper.
Yeah.
With these models.
Yeah, I mean, I'm testing, I'm going back and forth all the time among them, which is why it's like search. In the early days of search, you didn't use one search engine. You toggle between all sorts of different search engines. I had Alta Vista open. I thought it was better for some things. Yahoo was better because it was a directory and we sort of ordered things better and all this sort of stuff. So right now, like my defaults are, it is XAI is my go-to right now, this day and age. Sonnet 3.7, the Claude Sonnet 3.7 is my second go-to, and then ChatGPT 4. And ChatGPT 4 is more for like this here's another level 200. I have a slide for another level 200. Great recipe deliverer, especially if you get it in the British voice. Right? Please make me a roux, you know, for this, whatever. How do I do it? It's just, oh, you're gonna have a fabulous dinner tonight. And it goes through it all and it's reading it to me, and I'll just say, hey, you know, just like an Alexa. Or I'll say, hey, slow down for a second, go read that thing back to me, and it just reads to me. And I used to be a recipe person, I'd put the laptop up and everything else. I'm literally just having a conversation with chat. And the recipes have been good, which is also even better, right? Because you can tell it, like, I'm a better than average cook. right? So give me a recipe that lets me stretch a little bit, but I'm also not gonna rip open a box of mac and cheese either, right? So it'll sort of adjust to what your cooking levels might be. Yes,
Do you think ChatGPT's gonna drop in market share?
I can't see how ChatGPT doesn't drop in market share. I'm just saying that right now. And the other reason that Grok is a significant game changer is that they have the largest NVIDIA cluster in the world. They stood up the largest NVIDIA cluster in like, what was it?
30 days.
30 days in
19
outside
days.
Nashville.
19?
19?
Oh, yeah, they said 30 days, you're right.
19 days outside Nashville in a beat up warehouse, right? How many H100s do they have?
Like 100,000.
100,000 chips. I mean, that's just like, that's almost the supply.
Goals get to 1 million or 2 million. And to power it, because it's part of Elon, they brought in all the Tesla battery packs, you know, the kind you can mount in your garage.
Yeah,
They brought in all those, but they didn't work properly, so they had to reprogram the firmware, but they knew the boss. And they got that done like overnight, and then they brought in diesel generators, it just was like,
and it's paying off. I mean,
government's failing fire.
yeah, I mean, I feel like XAI, I can't believe I'm like so pro Elon tonight. It's just crazy. But like, it seems to me like chips matter, right? And so compute matters. Even when you have the new DeepSeek models coming out that have a completely different way of doing it, probably including just kind of ripping off the other guys and having it do all of its compute ahead of time. And then it gets to kind of work up here in the ethereal level. But, you know, compute will matter. I'm not saying you should short or long NVIDIA stock or anything like that, but like, I think it will always matter. You have a question?
I was really gonna ask about DeepSeek, which just promoted that, I mean, cause I think it cut the requirements needed to run the model, I mean, I know I can run DeepSeek with a lot of the weights that are not on my own computer, from my terminal.
Yeah, yeah, sits on a thumb drive if you want it, you know, I mean, all of DeepSeek, you know, and it can just run locally on your desktop. So that, you know, compute technology always does that too, right? And it's Moore's law basically, and it's just sort of like, it'll get cheaper and better and faster. And then the algorithms and how they make, how the learning engines are built will just completely change. They'll make up all sorts of new ways to do things faster, right? And so you'll have light models because you just don't need to have giant things to work on your household finances, right? You know what I mean? That can just run on your phone probably, right? But if you're trying to run US banks finance or a central bank, yeah, you're gonna need something beefy. We have right behind you. Yes,
So we did actually just kind of hit on something that's been stuck in my draw, since you put up, don't use a crap one. Sometimes you actually do want a crap one, because you don't need, like, I feel like your examples are much more geared towards like, if you're having a conversation with a chat model. But if you're deploying something out to production, you want something extremely reliable and dependable that's been well tested.
yeah, right. I just don't know because I don't roll out large scale things like that. I just don't know what that means yet. I personally don't know what it means to be production ready. You know, I assume it's security. I assume it's API integrations. I assume it's all of, you know, the interoperability and all of that. And yet, which is also sort of weird because a lot of the folks that I talk are defaulting to the things that are already integrated, like Gemini, like Copilot, these things, because it sort of does the job for them. They've already done the work. But again, the compromise. And so if what you're trying to do isn't necessarily like literally trying to put a rocket in space and you're just trying to get your accounting department to work better, maybe you don't need to have the biggest, fastest, juiciest model that's going to have a ton of compute. And by the way, someday they're actually going to start sending you bills. So, you know, that's a trade-off you're all going to have to make as you start to figure out how to procure this for an enterprise. You had a question?
Yeah, I think you made a good point earlier about how different models do different things.
Yeah.
Right, so it's the idea of a crappy model, there's definitely like lower tiers of it. Well, like, for example, if I was gonna write new code, I would use Sonic 3.7. It's horrible at debugging, and OpenAI 03 Mini, fantastic.
Really?
One
See, that's cool.
Is the smartest thing I've ever thought, by far. Grok is is great for unhinged conversations. 4.0 is great for like talking in real voice time. So it's not, different models are great at different things, and the only way you find that is you gotta spend time with them.
Yeah.
If I was gonna do something in production, it would be nothing but Gemini, because it's so good at structured out.
Interesting. See, that is, love that. Yes, did you have a question? Right.
I noticed that the example that you did, for your talk, was kind of a, current information research problem. And, I've been using primarily ChatGPT, but had gotten access to Perplexity. At least what I got was the Pro account because Xfinity just gave you a year of Pro for free. And I did it not knowing that it was right around when they started adding reasoning to it. And it did a way better job. I was trying to research, like, what is this company doing in this area? And ChatGPT gave me this very bland thing, and Perplexity did a much deeper research. And that for me was kind of like, well, I've been using kind of a crap one now, so.
So I have a quick Perplexity quiz for people. And it's a little bit metaphorical, so I don't, I'm not gonna try to be too obtuse about it, but like, does everyone know what Perplexity's vision actually is?
We have to Google it.
Not to go after Google,
Or replace.
not even that. Well,
Well,
maybe
they
yes to
position-
both those.
So Google's position as a search engine, they want to be an answer.
They want to be the answer engine, but the founder, can't remember his name right now, of Perplexity. What his mission is to build what Larry and Sergey originally wanted to build for Google. But page views, right, and advertising and keeping people stuck on Google prevented the money-making operation, the publicly traded Google company, prevented them from building the answer engine. Because what happens in an answer engine? How many page views is there when you get an answer? How many monetizable spaces on a page is there when they give you the answer? The answer is 0. So if you go from almost 30–40% of a page being monetized in a public auction by the biggest money in the world and every money in the world, every brand, to having one single space that's non-monetized, they couldn't build the technology. So when you look at Perplexity, it's actually what Google was originally, he modeled it after what they actually, what Larry and Sergey wanted to build and should have built. Sorry, I'm gonna go in order of hand. Behind you, there, yep, you.
Can you talk a little bit about what you think the moats are around these different AI engines? Because what I'm hearing a lot about finding the right intelligence for the particular task. But I found, and admittedly, I'm not playing with a lot of them, I'm focused mostly on ChatGPT, but features like the projects and folders, I found a lot of value there. I found an immense amount of value in the memory capability of
Yeah.
ChatGPT, because it remembers my writing style, it remembers how I want, like emails, it remembers things about my kids, it remembers about all sorts of things that you're not necessarily gonna find value in if you're just measuring like a single shot type of, are you smart enough to answer my one question? Kind of thing.
Memory is amazing, isn't it? And so, for example, ChatGPT has, I can't tell anybody this. Anyways, like it understands my finances. Because I've asked it lots of questions. Like when I had to pivot from owning the building for my agency to having to run it as a separate business. Right, I didn't expect to have to do that, and I did that. Things got real complicated for me financially. The agency was covering the expenses, but now I've got, it got real weird. And then we had, an SBA loan, and we had all, everything got really complicated. I'm not a CFO, and I was like pretending to be one. And so now when I type sort of like financial questions into, but it might be with just something random, like what's today's stock price for MicroStrategy or something, or what's the headwinds for MicroStrategy, right? It remembers, it'll be like, oh, I know why you might be interested in that because of your other things, you might be able to pay off your loan someday if MicroStrategy does this. I'm like, please make that happen, right? So it's like, it's fascinating. So it does remember who you are and it builds from chat to chat. So it doesn't like you don't have to go back to that thread. You could be talking about something else. And just like out of the blue, with outside of the context of the thread that you're actually in, say, oh, by the way, how's this, you know,
So the memory is a huge moat item for.
could be, yeah, could be,
But
right?
Do you see other items like that that would be kind of building a good moat around these different technologies?
So. Well, Rob and I were talking about this earlier, right? Like, and Adam, we were like, the moats might be similar to what it's been in the past, whereas the moat was like DOS. Right? You owned the enterprise, right? And so Microsoft was able, the moat was that they could just launch whatever they wanted at any time. I mean, let's be real. Like Microsoft Office is a bloated, horrible product. Can we all agree to that? Right? We all use 5% of the capabilities of Office on a daily basis, right? And so, you know, and that's like, you have so much stuff you never needed, you never wanted. And so the moat might be whether they own, if they own your memory, that's one thing, or memory of you, not your memory. Well, someday, well, the chips in our head. But you know, it could be the moat, it's the old fashioned, who owns your desktop, who owns your phone, who has the access point. It could be the NVIDIA clusters, that they have enough compute runway that everything, remember, the stuff that we're doing right now, everybody, this is no different than, again, when I built my first websites and users hated when I had images on them because it would take too long to load an image. Forget about video. And then I
You
did.
didn't interlace them.
What's that?
You didn't interlace your images.
Yeah, right. See, exactly. And you know, anyways, that's where we're at in this whole scene right now. I don't think we know what the moats are yet. I would love for the whole thing to get disrupted. You know, there will be companies that, you know, you could buy, I mean, after the crash, after 9/11, you could buy Amazon for $9. Right? And they were around since 94. Right? When crashed down to $9, right? If we'd all known now, it's like, oh no, actually, they're not an online bookseller. Right? That's, I mean, all the I almost said Jimmy Buffett. That's so awesome. Warren Buffett, the other guy, just like Jimmy. Yeah, Warren Buffett was like, you know, he was like, not into that. There's not enough people who want to buy books. You know, people, you know, the Oracle of Omaha. Were you gonna say something? No? Where are we in this presentation? I have no idea. All right, we're gonna keep moving along. All right, so we're gonna dig in. Level 2, I feel like we're talking about stuff way more sophisticated than what I have coming up here, which is okay. So keep going, keep coming with the questions. How many people are now using Zoom? No, like Fathom or a note taker, Otter.ai, all these sorts of things. So most people who have enterprise, you know, video conferencing, group setting stuff are now all taking notes because you can just send the notes back. Right? It's like a recap of the meeting. How many people here read the recaps of your meetings? What? That's awesome. You just say, I like reading. Right? You know, bless my project managers, you know, at the agency, because they don't have to take notes and send them over to the clients anymore. The meeting's over, zap them off, right? That's pretty cool. That's fine. But what I have struggled with for a long time is that as an agency owner, and I don't want to be like, I'm not an overlord at all at the agency. I'm not sneaking up on anybody. I'm not saying boo to anyone, you know, I don't really care. But what I do find that's really interesting is that you have all of these meetings, right? So we record all of our internal meetings, all of our client meetings. We have different folders for every client has their own folder and all this sort of thing. And I, as the owner, rather than going around to my staff and saying, hey, how are things going over at Securian? Or how are things going over at UCare? What do you think they're going to tell me? Everything's great. Or you're Minnesotan, it's fine. Fine is a disaster, right? Fine is the same as pending doom. Okay. So we have all this stuff going on, right? And and I'm not saying they're lying to me, I actually have a great staff, they would tell me if something's going on, but I could just go in here. And just like go in there and just say, which client seems to be the happiest with our results? Right? Based on the discussion, the client that seems to be the happiest with Cicerone's result is Securian. Right? It was just based on the sentiment of going on around all the conversations. So I talked to my account director, who oversees the Securian account. Actually, he oversees all of our accounts. And I said to him, this is what it came back with. Do you believe that that is true? He goes, absolutely. Right? So I didn't need to have that conversation with him. And I can sleep well at night because I want Securian to be happy. Right? Over here, they had another meeting all about different case studies that we wanted to develop. We're doing so much work these days. We're classic cobbler's kids, right? We're the worst marketers of ourselves and brilliant marketers for everybody else. Right? So we're going to write some new case studies and put them on our website, just like 1995 all over again, right? I hadn't gotten a report back from how that case study meeting went. I didn't want to bother everybody, you know, which one, and then I get 6 different opinions. I have to distill it down. And I can just say, which case study seems to have the most enthusiasm from the team? Based on the discussion, the case study that seems to have the most enthusiasm from the team is the one around using exclusion lists to exclude members and converted leads from low funnel Google campaigns like PMAX and paid search. Cool. I will be rewriting that to be, customer friendly. But anyways, that's really interesting for me, right? Because it is still, yeah, it's a real insight. It is something that is across their collective minds that probably would not have been captured necessarily in notes. Right? Yes.
Is Fathom just looking at a transcript of the meeting, or is it doing some sort of audio?
It is doing audio analysis, audio transcription to language. And
Is
then
it just looking at text and answering, or is it actually doing?
it's not listening for tone. I mean, if somebody knows otherwise, please correct me on that.
Sentiment of words.
Sentiment of words.
Tone of voice.
Right, yeah. I mean, it would say like, was the client angry? It depends. If the words came out that sounded like she was angry, but they wouldn't say like they yelled at your account director, which would be sad.
It could be like, it's doing great.
Yeah,
It's fine.
You know how to translate fine, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Maybe you don't want to say it, or maybe I'm jumping ahead, but it seems logical to say which client is unhappy.
Absolutely, but I didn't want to show you that. No, I don't have any unhappy clients. What are you talking about?
Fine.
They're all fine, okay? Yes.
This might be getting ahead, but
And make sure they can hear in the back, so.
are you looking at other use cases that preempt this? In other words, this is the during the meeting. Are you looking at the before the meeting? The messaging you did even before the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes,
then going all the way
absolutely.
to this point, because once you ingest about a 9-month cycle
Yeah.
of all of that, once you chain together, right, with
So-
workflow, it really gives you some interesting.
This might be like the dumbest little prompt I could have showed you guys,
Yeah.
right? What I really do, and I'm gonna show you, hopefully if we don't run out of time. Wow, this is going fast. You guys are good at asking questions. Okay. I really do use this for business intelligence, right? So I'm not gonna show you the slides, but I'm gonna tell you the story. Nope, I'm gonna hold on to your question and I'm gonna get to it in a second. How about that? Anyways, start doing this. It's really, really fascinating, right? Sentiment is really important, right? What's been committed to? What did we commit to that didn't end up in the notes or something? You know, there's all sorts of gappy things that happen because we're humans. And a lot of unspoken things that we miss because we're not together as humans all the time, when we're out little squares on laptops now. So there's a lot of stuff that gets, there's like 20% on both edges that I feel like we as the human experience are missing as of COVID. And I'm not saying that as a political statement, I'm literally saying as humans. And those on those edges, those 20%, maybe 10%, 20% on either side of it is sometimes where all the magic is and where feelings are and where intuition is. I can walk into a room and read a room real fast. It's just something that I have, right? I can't do it on Zoom calls. I have no idea who I'm talking to. And if I don't have body language, I'm screwed. And I'm not gonna lie to anybody in this room, it's been hard. Right? It's been hard to run an agency, it's been hard to run clients, it's been hard to do all this work. Thank God for a co-working space. Just to be around people, honestly. Okay, reporting optimization. How many people are in charge of analytics at all? Some BI, those kinds of things. We're a Domo shop, so we use Domo to ingest data from across the enterprise as much as the clients will give us to inform all sorts of different things. Performance of media, performance of marketing, performance on the business, sales increases. So we need to pull in things from Salesforce, from web data, from all of the media channels that we're running, Google, Meta, Trade Desk, third-party research, all this kind of stuff. And so we had to find something outside of Google Analytics to run this. And so we went into the Domo world. And so I just wanted to show you, this is from Megan Cameron, who runs our analytics practice. And I asked my team, like, what's your level 2 stuff, right? And so I'll read this to folks in the back, but like, how they've used it is that Domo AI, which basically we were beta testers for Domo AI, but we've been working for Domo now for a year and a half on their AI. So Domo AI to build dashboards off data sets. Previously, this would take us at least a couple of hours. With Domo AI, we click one button and an entire dashboard of visuals with headers, explanations, and labels is created within minutes. We go through and select the visuals that are useful and modify them if needed. This saves multiple hours every month and helps us generate new ideas on data visualization. So she's just taking us through a prompt-based system to asking questions about this client, and then it just runs through, and I don't know if I can pause, I probably can't. But creative performance, which creatives work better? We're not even in the creative business, so this helps our creative partners to know which creative to continue to create. That was eloquent. Audience targeting, which audiences are doing all of the video completions, click by campaign, conversion rates, all this sort of stuff. Now that we have the data all in there and the AI, we can just ask it questions. And hopefully soon, those questions will be able to be asked by our clients. Because my dream is that the CMO, who we get very little face time with, before she goes into the board meeting to report on how awesome how fine everything is, right? Can go and say, I'm going into the board meeting, give me the top 3 things that the board is going to want to know about performance or about anything this quarter, based upon last month's board minutes and the Q&A that we had at the end of the meeting. I'm not saying she can do this yet. I mean, she could if we engineered to do that, but that's where I want to go, right? And then she gets on her phone 3-4 slides right out of Domo based upon that prompt that she now has readily available that she can plug into a deck. She doesn't have to call us. That would have been an account person saying, it's going to be $2,000 and a project manager, and I'll have to get a graphic designer. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we don't need to do that anymore, right? I'm thankfully not in the business of producing those kind of assets. So I just want to give her the answers, so she can go into the board meeting and say the awesome things that we're all doing. But you have to have all the data in place in the first place. Yes, sir.
That to me is a perfect example of why SaaS companies, software as a service, that people build and put on cloud and you pay monthly for, is gonna get level set and wiped out and ground down to 0, because somebody's gonna come up with an AI interface that has all the data in the background. The data will still be there, but you won't have all this create, read, update, delete logic, trying to figure out which way to query the database and how to present it and do the UI. They will have trained a model, and it will have been trained on more than your data. It will have been trained on
The internet.
thousands, if not tens of thousands of creative programs. And then it takes your data and says, here's the model, here's the data, pump it out.
Yep.
And that would have been, a $4,000, $3,000 a month SaaS product in the background that took them $5 million to build and $5 million to get out into the enterprise. And it just got level set to 0 with an AI interface. That's what the future looks like. That's why I call AI a new platform. Platforms were client server, then the internet was a platform, the mobile was a platform, and everybody's been looking for the next one. They also had Web3, but I never believed that somebody was looking to make money. AI is the new platform. And platforms are what you build on and make money on. And everything that's a previous platform value drops to zero. There's no money building mobile. You can build an app, but you're not gonna get the money from it. There's no money building stuff on the internet.
You know what's proof of
Platform.
that? Because I can build an app and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, I can literally prompt it, build me an app to do this. That's what agentic is all about, right? That's what agent-based AI is. You literally tell it to, I want a task. I need to get this task complete. What do I need to do? I mean, it's gonna be dumb. It's gonna be, you know, like your mom and dad level, right? Where they could say, I'm going to Palm Springs, I gotta get my golf clubs there, and we wanna get the same place that we got last year in La Quinta, and I need a car. Right, and it'll know in the background that you're a national car rental place, and you've got Delta, SkyPoint, you know, all of your Delta logins, and you'll give it all of the credentials that it needs to go out and log in and do stuff for you. And that's like now, like we can do that now, right? And so just imagine like any task, any problem that a business person has right now that requires completely different platforms. And then to Rob's point, by the way, he's been doing it for 40 years, so he knows what he's talking about. And you know, like you said, in those early days, like we used to hand code all of our HTML, right? And I don't know if you remember this, Rob, but we developed one of the first WYSIWYG HTML editors. It was called Geek Free. And then I got sued by a guy who had a Geek Free podcast before there was even a word called podcast. So I had to change it to the minimizer. But at any rate, the point is that we then had a way that our clients who don't know how to write any code can just update their websites. I worked myself right out of a job. I was no longer in the web maintenance business, right? I've been putting myself out of business continuously for 30 years, you know, and I think that's why we're still here. And so that's what Rob's saying is absolutely right. I mean, these agents and the software that can write the code that you need, it can execute the code that you need, can attach itself to a library. Okay, let's get weird for a second. It can attach itself to a publicly available library that may be sort of e-commerce enabled. And if you made up something really cool, and you also had some IP attached to it through a blockchain, and now your ownership follows that application everywhere else, and all of a sudden somebody pays a little bit of ETH for it, or a little bit of Bitcoin someday, or credit card statements or whatever else, and your idea lives in perpetuity, which is right now, there's no moat, right? I mean, let's be real. ChatGPT, all those people stole everything. All the content, they stole everything, right? They didn't just follow Wikipedia, although it was a major part of it. They also went to all the links in the Wikipedia at the bottom of the page and stole all that too, right? And so now, because we don't have things like blockchain and all of that in place as one of the rails of the future, whereas if you as an inventor have an idea and you want to attach some value to that and attach authenticity and a signature to it, a digital signature to it, and your idea takes off and it's the app that everybody uses to check how the health of their daycare is working, because you just decided that you wanted to do that for your own understanding, and you put it out there, and all of a sudden every person that has their kid in daycare starts using this app to get a report on the health of their child, and you make, I don't know, 0.0005 cents every time somebody does that. Guess what? You just paid for your kid's college education, right? That's where we're headed.
the other thing is, people say software developers are going away. I've got a 180 on that. If you're building enterprise software, that's gonna go away, but the need for people to build, you're basically gonna take all the enterprise software and scrape it off and rebuild it using different platforms. So there's gonna have to be, I don't know what the X number of factors of software developers that we're gonna need to do it, but it's gonna be huge. I mean, during Y2K, when they went in and looked at everything that was gonna blow up and sent it, send us into the dark ages. That just jacked up the employment for software developers for years. That's what's gonna happen with this. Somebody's gonna have to maintain that enterprise software, then you're gonna have to replicate all that functionality in a totally different platform. It's something new that you don't understand and that all the development tools aren't there. It's gonna take longer, and software development's not going away. It's just gonna morph into something different.
Okay, we went to level 1,000. Thank you for coming tonight.
That's what's flagged at the door.
Yeah. I want to show you one more. Yeah, we're so good. Plus, there's no Q&A time, right? Like we're all Q&A in this whole thing tonight, right? This is something I thought was interesting. Caribou's going through some things right now, if you haven't noticed. You're reading in the business journal or elsewhere. And I was thinking to myself, like, if I was Caribou, what would I want to do to like really understand what my competitors are doing? So I sort of I just sort of prompted into existence, just a competitive analysis, like a daily brief, right? And so I prompted it, and I think I will be able to go live, but I hope I don't screw everything up. Probably will. Can't even go up. Oh, it came up, good. So I would like you to create a weekly competitive intelligence report between Starbucks and Caribou Coffee, looking for current sentiment analysis, new product offerings, pricing, and specific things Caribou can do to outwit Starbucks, right? And then it said, and by the way, this is why humans are super important right now. Below is a fictional weekly competitive intelligence report. And I'm like, fuck, I don't want fictional, right? And so I went down, I read all of its stuff. I went down and I went down and I went down and I said, how can you make this non-hypothetical? How about we just say for February 2025? And I clicked the button for deep research, which is super fun. If you have really fast eyes and you can read really fast, you can look at how it's thinking, its chain of thought. It's pretty cool. So always go to the deep stuff sometimes, because you can really, it exposes to you what it's doing. So in that case, it was like, oh, well, this is what they did, right? The request is for this. I'm considering what a competitive import involves, blah, blah, blah. What are all the different things that I can do? And I could scroll through this forever, but this is the whole chain of thought. So this is not the response. This is just showing me what it went through to get me to the response, right?
And if you did it again, it would be different.
Probably, right? So then we get down to here, and it's like key points. And remember, this is just for February. Starbucks received mixed reviews, with customers appreciating consistency but complaining about rising prices and service issues. For example, some X posts, shocking, it understands what X says. X posts highlighted pricing concerns while others praised seasonal drinks. In contrast, Caribou Coffee had generally positive sentiment, with customers valuing its cozy atmosphere and quality through its limited geographic presence was a noted drawback. So I'm not going to read all of this to you because that'd be boring, but it's just so fascinating to me. And it tells like specific things that Caribou should do to address these different things. So I might not want my where am I going? I want to get back to you guys. I'm going to get my screen back so that you can all see what I'm trying to do here.
Alter.
Just escape, please.
My problem is I can't see my mouse. I can't do my thing. I know exactly. Escape, right? No, escape didn't work. There we go. I got it. I just couldn't find my mouse or anything. Okay. What I might do is I probably am not going to like read this every morning. Like I could have this thing and say, and then email it to me or whatever, right? So I could get this every day, but I could have this run every day for a month and then throw it in, right? Throw it in and start, and then have it say, across this month, what seemed to be the commanding themes of my competitor of Starbucks. You know, like the Starbucks seemed to be on some sort of a decline in this area, in this region, and whatever it might be. You know, you put your own business KPIs into it, you put your own sort of interests in it and everything else. And then maybe at the end of each month, the report that comes out, you and your team do get together and say, hey, we have a surgical strike opportunity to be able to get in on pricing in California or something else like this based upon settlement scores. And this is where clients or brands can use these tools to try and leg up in hyper competitive markets, right? But it's the same for any of our brands, right? I could have put any of my competitors in here and sort of had some, you know, interesting things. I would love to know, like, I should probably have one that just sort of triggers me an alert to say, like, whenever there are new job openings at any of these competitors, let me know what they are, because I might be interested to know, you know, where they have gaps or where they're trying to hire people, and it may show weakness, you know, not that I'm like super hardcore, but like, you know, or whatever, like, those are all insights that I would never have access to, and it would take way too much time, right? I'd be Googling all over the place and then everything else. It's just so helpful. So that's a sort of level 200 competitive analysis, sentiment analysis, and all this. And again, I thought Grok did a great job. Man. Oh, I can't do it. I'm gonna pause. The next stuff that I have up here is what I do for a living, which is a whole bunch of stuff. And we do this for sales teams a lot. I'll just tell you what we do without showing you. So every person who's a salesperson who's on sales calls every day, let's say you have 20 people on a sales team or 200 or whatever else. Most of the time, they're all using Zoom or Fathom and Otter AI and all this kind of stuff. And I always say that is the most precious intellectual property that will ever be shared with your brand. The conversations between a prospect and a customer and a salesperson. And nobody minds it for real intelligence. It dawned on me as soon as I saw, it was the first application that I did with AI. And now we built a platform on it, because what I want to do is I want to be able to show our client, we want to ingest everything that they have available, including conversational data, right? Because now conversation becomes data. And now because it's data and language, I can do something with it. I super do appreciate everyone taking the picture of that. That's great. Thank you. I also like that it's the only time you took up your camera and took a picture. So I'm just going to breeze through. I just said this. So all the stuff comes in through Fathom, becomes transcripts, goes into Salesforce, and then we put it into a centralized repository. Right now, it's either Snowflake or Databricks, depending upon sensitivities and all of this. And then we have those bespoke insights. And now I'm getting into the media world. And in the media world, what we do is we take those, what we're trying to do is develop audiences that are very, very highly attuned to our clients, based upon what people are actually saying in real life on the other, this is a phone, by the way, on a phone, you know, and expressing themselves. So that changes everything, because now I know what the language is that they use, so that can impact creative. So my personas completely change, right? So now instead of saying our customers, we can say, well, which one? We're like, these people, and we've always had personas, right? But they're oftentimes based on like focus groups and panels, and not thousands and thousands and thousands of phone calls and customer touch points. A panel of the whole market. I love that, way better. And then we can start to develop creative that's going to speak to them much more attuned. So like, for example, this person who is going to sign on to Forest Carbon Works is leaving their land for legacy. They're not trying to make money off of it or whatever else. That's the most important thing for them. You know, in the other case, so it's grandpa, grandkid, the dog, all this. And other people, it's all about conservation. They want to have habitat, they want to maintain habitat. And for other people, they're trying to figure out how to monetize their forest land. Sorry, I totally missed the punchline way earlier. This is for a forest carbon sequestration company that extracts the carbon, has all sorts of science, and then sells it to the carbon market. And then polluters buy those carbon credits. and then the forester gets paid. It's a market, it's a closed loop system of people offsetting their carbon emissions. And guess who uses them? Data centers. Making full loop on this whole conversation tonight, right? They gotta buy carbon credits. So anyways, the whole point is to use all of this to really activate against who your people actually are. So I can go from having some media waste to having zero media waste to having sloppy creative that only speaks to some percentage of the people you're putting it in front of, to having it being highly attuned to people, what they want. And then what happens? You get more highly informed calls coming into the salespeople. We use it for scripts so that the scripts are different based upon the call that's coming in. You can say, oh, it's a conservation minded person. These are the 5 talking points. We can get right to the chase. We can like, I don't have to like suss out who am I talking to and all this. It's really, really magical. You know, in the interest of time, and it is 8:04, I think. I was gonna say talk amongst yourselves, but we've been doing that for like an hour and a half, but we have time for a few more, yeah? Okay, yes, sir.
Is there any sign that any of these LLMs are going down the path, the mistake that Google and Amazon made? If you pay me money, you'll come in and first, the top of the search.
Oh, interesting. So the question is, are the AI models going to, I'm gonna paraphrase what you said. Are they going to sell results to the highest bidder? Just like search did with Google AdWords, right? Now, as far as we know, and I guess I'm going to trust them, that whatever shows up on the SEO result doesn't have anything to do with who pays at the top. Let's just accept that as a truth. Whether it is or not, I can't prove one way or the other. There will be commerce integrated into a lot of this. I'm surprised, or maybe they do it and I just have missed it, that Perplexity hasn't done it by keyword, embedded keyword. I assume that that's going to be a monetizable thing where the result comes back and every time the word digital agency comes up in a search result, whether it has to do with Cicerone or not, that I have said anytime digital agency Minneapolis comes up in an AI generated result, I want to buy that and I want to buy the click. That seems to me like a no-brainer. It still gives the user everything that they want, which is the answer. And by the way, Cicerone is actually hidden from them. I should say hidden in a nefarious way, meaning it's not presented. Cicerone is not presented unless maybe they hover over the hyperlink. I still love it. We're probably still going to have blue hyperlinks for the rest of our life. But you know what I mean? Like that, I think that there will be ways to do that. And then there's going to be entire models that we've never thought of before. They do have to make money because the compute is not inexpensive. Even the richest person on the planet probably wants to get some payback on his NVIDIA chips. So there will be new monetization plans, but I don't think anybody quite knows yet. Right now, they're throwing money at it to see who can be on that slide that I wrote. There's only going to be one winner, and they want to be it. And they have venture capital money, and their venture capitalists are no dummies. Well, I think there's a bunch of dumb money right now, but at any rate, they want to be the winner. Yes. Yeah. Can I go over here? If you don't mind? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I have some concern with AI, especially thinking about the closed loop and everything that you have shown before.
Yeah.
For example, we give a client the output of some AI thing we have drafted, and then the client maybe they will take that answer and they will feed to their own AI, maybe different model, and this kind of thing will go again and again and again. Maybe at this moment, the level of agent AI is still kind of mid-size.
Yeah.
Now humans still take more control than the agent AI.
Yeah.
But in few years ahead, maybe they are stronger than human.
I'm going to answer your question in a bit of a circuitous route, if you don't mind.
Okay.
When I told you that I was starting to use XAI, the first thing that I did A, I had to fire up Twitter again, which I kind of said I wasn't gonna do, so I did. Went into XAI. And Grok and I had a real long evening conversation together. Okay? We had it out. Because I needed to know before I would trust it, how much of the thumb was on the scale of what I consider to be clear bias from the owner of the company. Okay? We can have differences of opinions on whether Elon Musk is this or that or the other thing. I happen to vehemently think he's one of the most amazing, brilliant engineers of all time, who has, you know, when the booster comes out and gets grabbed by the claw, mind blown. I watch every SpaceX live video takeoff, right, from on YouTube. I can't stop myself. Every time that stupid booster, whatever, lands on the ship out in the middle of the ocean, my mind is blown, right? But I still don't trust the guy, right? Because I don't know if I understand where his humanity starts and his robot mind takes over. And so I'm answering your question by saying that we don't know yet whether we trust any of this, which is why the human is so important. Because when you see the output, I can read this, and I'm a pretty reasonable person that has been doing some things for a long time, and I can sniff it out pretty quick if it's hallucinating. So what's going to happen is that there's going to have to be an interface and a continued learning interface by the prompt inputs. The prompts themselves, I think, should be regenerating AI, right? Because trolls and bots don't prompt AI. Yeah, I don't know that, right? Not yet, maybe, or whatever. But like, if you are a verifiable human, right, and you are prompting to try and get to an answer to the question, I like the Socratic method. I think the question that you're asking, the prompts, I mean, my prompts are really low, right, are just as important as the output. And I would love for the prompts to be centralized upon all of these sort of things so that we understand the human element and the human nature and the human drive and the fears and the hopes and the dreams that we are expressing to these engines in an anonymous way. I hope they're learning from them so they understand what problems we're trying to solve for humanity. And if it does that, we can reverse engineer the AI to be as human as possible. And I have no idea if I answered your question or not, but I did warn you it was circuitous. So does that help? I mean, like when we're training, when outputs, I get super nervous about it, and I do it. I will output a report and I will give it to a client. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope it's right. I just did a pricing study for a client, a pricing study. Okay. But when I was working with the AI, I was very clear about citing sources and having it go back and double check sources and go back. And if I thought there was any hallucination, and then I would ask it. And I would say, has any data that you have provided to me been fabricated? And the first time I did that, the first response that came back was, my bad. It wasn't exactly that, but it was basically saying, trust me, bro, right? Like it said, I fabricated this whole section. And I'm like, please rewrite it without fabrication. Now, had I not caught that, I would have given a pricing study to an organization that you and I all know. And they could have changed their pricing based upon me not catching a hallucination. And there's a lot of people in this world that don't live out on the risk curve like I do, who will say, fuck that. I want nothing to do with this. I'm not putting myself on the line. Right? So that's where we're at right now. And I think the trust levels are going to have to advance. And I think we're going to have to reverse engineer it so that the prompts and the desires that we're expressing are accounted for in the algorithms. Yeah.
I'm waiting for the AI to say it's fine.
I'm waiting for the AI to say it's fine. Yeah, like the dog in the burning building, right? Yeah.
Keep track of the prompts and, you know, move on.
You do that? I have no idea. I don't. But I'm also ADHD, so like I have 100 ideas all at the same time. I mean, I guess there's records of them all over, and I go back to threads and chats, A lot.
You made the comment about like bots aren't in it, but I know lots of people that came out of the NFT space that have bots that they've written that all they do is feed shit into prompts and see what happens.
By the way, just my little nickname for our president right now is President, we'll see what happens. Okay, yep.
I'm using LLMs for kind of two functions. One is where I basically know what the right answer is, like draft a blog post. And then I just kind of circulate through all these LLMs to kind of, I can grab that, I can edit it, I can publish it. And then the other category is actually the question where I don't know the right answer. And what I do, literally, I summon the council of experts, all open like 3 tabs with 3 different LLMs. And I'll make sure I'm copying and pasting the exact same prompt.
Yep.
And then if they're all just about the same answer, that's a higher confidence situation. If it's 3 totally divergent answers, that's not kind of, I'm like, okay, this is something that AI can't do yet. And then I've got to dig in, and figure it out by hand.
I will also say this, somebody in this room knows the answer to this question. There is a platform where you can prompt in a central prompt and then it pulls up the results from the top 10 AIs. I can't
It's
remember
an
what.
aggregator.
It's an aggregator.
There's several of them.
There's a couple of those.
Poll, I think,
Okay.
I think there's a whole new.
There's another one that sounds like Simple Web or something, but that's like old fashioned SEO stuff. Yeah.
I've actually built a wrapper that wraps 4 models into a single interface.
Yeah.
But it's not just single prompt for responses, it's single prompt with a response and a response to the response and responses. So there's awareness of the different models that are involved in the conversation.
Does it learn which models are better at certain aspects of the question?
So it's not learning anything other than from each other because you're building on each other's responses.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, you can configure each of the 4 models to take on different characteristics and take on different prompts. So you can assign personas to that. And then you can have a roundtable conversation with 4 models simultaneously. So the council of experts, it's a tool, it's free. If you bring your own API keys, you can give it a whirl. I can share that.
Very cool. It's great. Level 1200.
Yeah. I think there's still a lot to learn about LLMs and how to use it. I feel like there's a tendency to want to just take what we've done and use the AI for it. The thing that I built that I'm most proud of is my wife was sending me pictures in the dressing room of like, do you like this shirt? Do you like these clothes? And I'm like, I'm horrible at that. A, it's a trap. There's no right answer. I don't have the context or like the opinion to know if it's good. So I had her take pictures of all of her clothes, put them into a database, fine tune an LLM I called Tabitha, and hook it up to Twilio. And she just sends the pictures there, gives really good feedback, really honest feedback, and I don't get it. And she's so happy. So happy.
Husband of the year. Anyone else? Do we exhaust all of our understanding of AI? And you guys are, we got a couple more. Okay. Yes.
So I'm a chemical engineer and I feel like all of you guys see AI in a different lens than I do.
Chemical engineer sees AI different than we do. Imagine that. Like, let's go build a bomb.
But where do you think the most value is for me? Like, do you think I should focus on the energy side of AI? Do you think I should focus on using AI? Like, where will I gain the most value in this?
Ooh, as a chemical engineer? Well, okay, I don't know if my pay grade can do that. I will say this, and I will say that there are now new materials being developed that have never existed before as a result of AI. So material science is changing a lot. I'm sure chemistry is probably doing the same thing. Who knows if the periodic table changes because of AI, right? With something that seems impossible, right? Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals are using it to predict the right molecules for medicine.
Yeah, that's catalyst.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it was, when it all first came out, my first reaction was, I can't wait for medical research to take this and cure us of everything. And part of it is personal. My dad has Parkinson's. Gratefully, it's not a it's not a genetic disease that handed down. But still, and my best friend in the world died 6 weeks ago from ALS. And he 6 months between diagnosis and death, you know? And so I can't wait for these tools. I mean, people are terrified of things that are new. People hated the internet, right, Rob? I mean, they hated the internet. They thought for sure it was the end times, you know? It's not coincidental that things like the Waco, Texas, David Koresh stuff and the internet started about the same time. Conspiracies and step changes always happen together. And, you know, I just look at the whole thing and say, you know what, the concerns that we have, they've always existed. But humans can be amazing. We know that too. And when amazing people get these tools and amazing people can cure disease, solve urban design issues that keep people segregated and transportation not working properly. And look, I can't say I can't believe we're gonna end on another Elon note, but like fundamentally Doge isn't a bad thing. The concept of an efficient government as a tax-paying person, I want our federal government and our state governments to have the very best technology implemented with urgency. Because I think that that's what we deserve, right, as citizens. And if we had great technology in place, we had great AI, they'd make better decisions than a lot of sort of bureaucratic decisions, right? And I don't mean this to be a blast on anybody who's a public servant. It's amazing that you do the work that you do, but at the same time, inefficiency is also baked into the process. And I think that there's just so many things that we're going to unlock over the next 5 to 10 years that whether you're a chemical engineer, a material scientist, a surgeon, a medical researcher, a caregiver, a hospice care person, we're going to have it's going to transcend everything that we do. And I have to believe, because I want to, that all of this is for good. And we're going to figure it out. There's going to be some bad shit that happens because there's some bad shit people in the world. And if the new arms race is between good and evil, I'm going to bet on good. Because it'll be revealed to us throughout the time when we cure cancer, right? When we solve major problems, right? When we find out that I mean, I'm just going to throw it out. When we find out that a truly free market economy that is dedicated towards solving climate change, and there's an economy around it, and there's incentives to make things better, faster, exponentially, and AI helps us do that, I think that would be great, right? And so that's a little bit of my libertarian side of me, but like I want these tools unleashed on smart people with the good incentives. So I think whatever you decide to do, use the tools, but then go create some cool new chemistry that solves the world's problems, right?